And let me bring you some breaking news now. Morgan McSweeney, Downing Street Chief of Staff, has just resigned. In the past few moments, we've received a statement. Let me read it to you. After careful reflection, I have decided to resign from the government. The decision to appoint Peter Mandeslon was wrong. He has damaged our party, our country, and trust in politics itself. When asked, I advised the Prime Minister to make that appointment, and I take full responsibility for that advice. In public life, responsibility must be owned when it matters most, not just when it is most convenient. In the circumstances, the only honourable course is to step aside. This has not been an easy decision. Much has been written and said about me over the years, but my motivations have always been simple. I have worked every day to elect and support a government that puts the lives of ordinary people first and leads us to a better future for our great country. Only a Labour government will do that. I leave with pride in all we have achieved, mixed with regret at the circumstances of my departure. But I have always believed there are moments when you must accept your responsibility and step aside for the bigger cause. As I leave, I have two further reflections. Firstly, and most importantly, we must remember the women and girls whose lives were ruined by Jeffrey Epstein and whose voices went unheard for far too long. Secondly, while I did not oversee the due diligence and vetting process, I believe that process must now be fundamentally overhauled. This cannot simply be a gesture, but a safeguard for the future. I remain fully supportive of the Prime Minister. He is working every day to rebuild trust, restore standards, and serve the country. I will continue to back that mission in whatever way I can. It has been the honour of my life to serve. That statement coming into us in just the past few moments by Morgan McSweeney, Downing Street Chief of Staff, who has just announced his resignation. We can cross live now to our political editor, Beth Rigby, who joins us now on the line. Beth, this news from Morgan McSweeney, which many, it has to be said, had been expecting.
Yes, Barbara, the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff and his right-hand man for a number of years has just stepped down from Downing Street and sent me that statement moments ago, which you have just read out on air. He has basically taken the fall in what is a burgeoning crisis for the Prime Minister, and really the pressure has been building for days on Morgan McSweeney and Keir Starmer that someone needed to take responsibility for the decision to put Peter Mandelson back into government as the ambassador to the US for the UK last February. You know, he was sacked in September, but since the revelations over the weekend of the Epstein files from the US government, the pressure has been building. And in that statement, you can see Morgan McSweeney here taking responsibility, saying the decision was wrong. He says, clearly, I advised the Prime Minister to make that appointment, and I take full responsibility for that advice. In public life, responsibility must be owned when it matters most. He goes on to say it wasn't an easy decision. He said much has been written and said over me over years, but my motivations have been simple: to work every day to elect and support a government putting the lives of ordinary people first. He goes on with two further reflections. One is to remember the victims, the women and girls whose lives were ruined by Epstein, and voices who went unheard. And he also talks about the due diligence and vetting process. He makes a point here that he did not oversee the due diligence and vetting process. He says that the process must now be fundamentally overhauled. This has to be a safeguard for the future. And I think there's a clue there as well, which is what the Prime Minister was talking about on Thursday, that the vetting process let down. The Prime Minister certainly saying that the vetting process didn't throw things up that should have been revealed. And Morgan McSweeney there also saying that the vetting process wasn't fit for purpose and should be overhauled. But look, Barbara, the big issue of all of this was Keir Starmer had been holding on to Morgan McSweeney as his chief of staff in the recent days. The pressure had been building, but clearly there has been a decision in Number 10, and maybe it was Morgan McSweeney himself that something had to give. And Morgan McSweeney really is resigning now in order, if you like, to try and save the Prime Minister and to take a bit of heat from the Prime Minister, from his backbenchers and his party, who are absolutely furious at what has unfolded. And you have seen in recent days the manner in which a number of MPs have publicly called for Morgan McSweeney to go, or even some of them saying that Keir Starmer's position is untenable. And you would have heard Harriet Harman on our podcast, Electoral Dysfunction, a couple of days ago, saying that she thought that the whole operation in Number 10 needed overhauling. And I guess Morgan McSweeney's decision to resign is the attempt to save the Prime Minister and change the team around him in order to buy him some time to try and hold on in what is a party that has thinking about calling time on him.
And Beth, of course, you were mentioning there Harriet Harman's, what she said, speaking on the podcast, really calling the Prime Minister's judgment into question. We've now had this resignation. Do you think that this takes the pressure off the Prime Minister? Because, of course, there's also been talk about him stepping down.
I think that the realisation has dawned within Downing Street in the past 48 hours when you see the sense of despair, anger, frustration within the parliamentary party, and you see hitherto loyalists actually coming out to criticise, to offer advice, to voice frustrations, that this was a very, very serious situation for the Prime Minister. And I think that what Morgan McSweeney's resignation is an attempt to do is to shore him up, to say to the backbenchers, we have heard you. But look, I don't need to tell you that this decision is not coming from a position of strength. This decision is coming from a position of weakness by the Prime Minister, understanding that the depth of unhappiness in his party means that he has to seriously overhaul the operation and Morgan McSweeney has to go. But look, just a moment on Morgan McSweeney. He has been key to Keir Starmer's ascent to the leadership. He ran the election campaign in 2024 and is credited with the success of that campaign. He has been Keir Starmer's chief advisor and his chief of staff. So for Keir Starmer to let Morgan McSweeney go, that will be a body blow for Keir Starmer. And in the past 24 hours, even as early as this morning, I think you heard Pat McFadden, the Work and Pensions Secretary, on the airwaves saying, Morgan McSweeney going does not solve the issue. That's not the issue here. But clearly it might be, and I don't know yet, this is literally just broken. It might be that Morgan McSweeney decided he needed to go in order to try and protect the Prime Minister. It might be that the Prime Minister and him have had a conversation and Keir Starmer has suggested to him that he needs to go. That I do not know yet. It's literally just broken. But in terms of the Prime Minister, this is an attempt to save the Premiership, and someone needed to take responsibility. I put it to Harriet Harman and I put it to the Prime Minister actually on Thursday, whether it was he who had to take responsibility, because ultimately he took the decision to appoint Mandelson. But in the end, the person taking responsibility and trying to take a bit of heat out of this is Morgan McSweeney by standing down. But I don't need to tell you that that decision will, of course, leave Downing Street in absolute turmoil, because Morgan McSweeney really was the linchpin of the operation. He'd had a power struggle with Sue Gray, the former chief of staff, a former senior civil servant brought into the Starmer leadership team ahead of the general election. She was let go. And then Morgan McSweeney stepped from being head of campaigns into the chief of staff role, but he has gone. And I think the fact he has gone tells you that the depth of the difficulty that the Prime Minister is in, because my guess would have been that Keir Starmer would have wanted to keep Morgan McSweeney. He wouldn't have wanted Morgan McSweeney to be the fall guy for this. But the momentum against the operation, the anger, the situation that the Labour Party is in, the way in which the Mandelson appointment and then subsequent revelations is damaging the party has meant that Keir Starmer needs to be seen to be clearing out those that have advised and been around him in order to try to reset the operation, in order to try to cling on to the leadership and cling on as Prime Minister.